What happens when a low-ranked radio man dares to speak louder than his own commanders? They tried to bury his signal, but what followed made silence itself impossible. You know what they told me? Just hold your position, Private Merritt. Like I was some kind of sandbag with a radio strapped to it. Like I did not have ears, eyes, or a damn brain in my skull. That was May 1942, North Africa. The sun was doing its best to roast the whole world in one go, and the wind kicked sand into every crack you forgot you had. Somewhere past the dunes, Rommel's armor was chewing through our boys like they were yesterday's rations. The British command, already halfway packed, halfway gone. I swear, if retreating were a medal, they would have pinned it on themselves before the first bullet flew. And me, I was sitting in a half-blown concrete box with a busted field radio, sweat dripping off my nose, trying to get someone, anyone, on the other end to listen. They didn't. My name's John Merritt. I was 23. Black, a radio man from Leeds, and by some miracle, I still believed that what I did mattered. I believed, not in the big slogans or polished boots or Churchill speeches, but in the men I fought beside. The ones who didn't care where you were from, as long as you carried your weight and showed up when it counted. But you know what happens when a man like me opens his mouth in a room full of officers. You get that look. The one that says, "You should be grateful we even let you hold a rifle." That morning I got a distress call. Real one. Static. Then a voice. It crackled, but I knew who it was. Lieutenant Brown. Young, stubborn, and one of the rare few who treated me like I wasn't furniture. He wasn't screaming, but there was blood in his tone. Urgency. Like his lungs knew time was running out. "This is D7, pinned down, taking fire, one man down, need evac." "Merritt, if you hear this..." I heard him. I relayed the call through official channels, twice, then once more for the ghosts. HQ's response: "Stand by, await further instruction. No resources available at this time." No resources. That's military talk for "we don't give a damn." So I sat there, for 1 full minute, breathing heavy, looking at the dust rise outside while command played poker with lives. Then I stood up, said nothing, just packed the medkit, 2 canteens, my sidearm, and a roll of bandages held together with a rusted safety pin. My partner, Stevens, Scottish lad with a busted nose and a heart of gold, looked up from the dirt. "You serious, Merritt?" "I look like I'm kidding? They'll hang you for desertion. They'll have to catch me first." He didn't try to stop me, just handed me a cigarette and said, "Light it when you get back." I stepped out into the heat like I was walking into a furnace. The dunes shimmered, the horizon melted, and I walked. Not because I was brave, but because I was tired of sitting while good men bled. You ever cross open desert under sniper threat? Every step sounds like betrayal. Every gust of wind might carry a bullet. But I kept going, my boots filled with sand. My hands shook, not from fear, from fury. 45 minutes later, I found them. One was gone. Bullet through the neck, face half buried in the dirt. Another, bleeding from the thigh, white as chalk, teeth clenched so tight I thought he might break his jaw. And Brown, he was alive, barely. Left arm tied off with his own belt, pistol in his right hand, barrel pointed at a rock like it owed him money. When he saw me, he blinked like he was dreaming. "You?" "Yeah," I said. "Me." We didn't hug, didn't say thank you, just got to work. I gave them water, tied a tourniquet, dug out a shallow pit for cover. Brown stared at me the whole time, like he was trying to figure out if I was real. "You know they're not coming, right?" he asked. "Yep." "Then why? Because someone should." That shut him up. We waited. Longest 2 hours of my life. Sun beat down. Flies landed on the dead man's lips, and the air smelled like warm rust and sweat-soaked wool. Brown coughed. The wounded one whimpered. And I just sat there, hand on the radio, listening to the same static that got them forgotten in the first place. And then HQ finally called back. "Any sign of enemy advancement?" I pressed the button. "Yeah, they advanced past our conscience about an hour ago." No reply. That night I stayed awake while Brown slept, or passed out. Hard to tell the difference. I watched the stars crawl across the sky and wondered how many more voices like his would disappear into the air, lost between channels and cowardice. But not this one. Not on my shift. What happened next changed everything. Stick around. You need to see what unfolded when the system pushed too far, and he pushed back. Let me tell you something straight. Nothing humbles a man like dragging 2 injured soldiers through burning sand with the whole army acting like you no longer count. No backup, no smoke cover, not even a good luck over the radio. Just silence, the official kind. The kind they use when they want your name forgotten before it even fades from the roster. But names stick, especially when you're too damn stubborn to die. By the time I got Brown and the other kid, Private Henley, I later learned, behind a rock formation that gave us half a shadow, my shirt was stuck to my back and my knees felt like rusted hinges. Henley was slipping in and out, pale, weak. A young one, no more than 19, looked like he never even finished shaving. "Water," he whispered, lips cracked. I gave him mine. He tried to smile, then passed out. I checked Brown's pulse next. He was burning up. Infection was already having its say, and the med kit I had... Well, let's just say the army didn't exactly stock those things with miracles. Still, I cleaned what I could, wrapped what I had left, and sat there, waiting, staring at the empty sky, pretending to believe someone was coming. Then I heard the crunch. Footsteps. Not heavy, not boots, something lighter. Quiet. I tensed, hand on my sidearm, looked up. A kid, not Henley, a local, maybe 12, wearing rags and sandals made from tire rubber. He stood just far enough to run if things went sideways. I raised a hand. He didn't flinch. "You speak English?" I asked. The kid pointed at Brown. "You soldier." I nodded. The kid looked over his shoulder, then back at me. "German come, soon." I didn't even blink, just said, "You got water?" He nodded. I reached into my shirt, pulled out the silver ring my father gave me when I left home, handed it to the kid. "Bring water. Bring help. You'll be paid." He stared at the ring. Not like it was shiny, like it had weight. Real weight. And then he ran. I leaned back against the rock and exhaled. Brown opened one eye. "You trust him?" "No," I said, "but I trust we're out of better options." We waited. Hours, minutes. Time was soft in that heat. The kind of soft that melts bullets and resolve. Henley's breathing got shallow. I kept checking the pulse, kept whispering nonsense to keep him grounded. Stories about back home, about Sunday mornings in Leeds, about the coal stove and the bitter tea. I don't even know if I was talking to him, or to myself. Then the radio crackled. Not a call, not a voice, just crackle, like someone breathing through 1,000 miles of dust. I grabbed it. "This is Merritt. We are alive. 3 men, D7 sector. Request immediate evac." Nothing. Then, "You were ordered to stand down." The voice wasn't one I recognized. Calm, too calm. The kind that reads death notices without emotion. "You gonna help or not?" I asked. "We're reallocating resources. You disobeyed direct orders." There it was, the system showing its hand. "You know what I see," I said, not yelling, just flat. "I see 3 men who followed through when others ran. I see a wounded officer, a kid barely grown, and a radio man who thought maybe the uniform meant something. And all you can say is reallocation. Static. I almost hoped they'd cut me off. But they didn't. They let me hang in it. Let me feel it. That's the thing about certain men in war. They don't need to shoot you to kill you. They erase you with procedure, and once you're off paper, you're off map, off memory. You've gone outside the chain of command, Private, the voice said finally. Good, I replied. That chain's been choking people like me since day one. That shut him up. But it also told me something. I was no longer a soldier. Not in their eyes. I was a liability. So be it. That night the kid returned, with 2 goats, a jug of something that smelled like diesel mixed with honey, and a man who looked like he'd wrestled the desert and lost. He didn't speak English, but he knelt beside Henley and poured the drink down slow. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out what looked like old field bandages, real ones, and started working. Brown watched, eyes half open. Who the hell is this? Our field medic, I said. Unofficial, unpaid, unrecognized. He chuckled, then groaned. The local man worked fast, cleaned wounds with a kind of rough tenderness I hadn't seen in any army tent. When he was done, he looked at me, nodded once, then pointed east. 2 days, he said. I understood. If we moved, if we followed his lead, 2 days to something. A village, a road, maybe just water. Either way, it was more than we were getting from the British command, so we moved. Next morning, I rigged a stretcher. Brown limped. Henley was tied in with belts and cloth. I held the radio close, but didn't bother calling. Not anymore. I wasn't speaking into it for them. I was speaking so we wouldn't feel so alone. Every now and then, Brown would glance at me. Not with suspicion, with something else. Respect. That was new. You think they'll court-martial you? He asked once. I think they already have, I said. Then he said the thing that stuck. Then, make it worth it. This is the moment it all turns. The fight is no longer about survival. It's about being seen. You've made it this far. Now don't look away. One remained, and everything changed. This story is not about titles. It's about perseverance when everyone has turned their back on you. If you care that such people have been forgotten, subscribe. Write in the comments whether he should have obeyed the order or stayed. You ever walked into a place knowing you weren't supposed to survive it? Not just die, but be forgotten. Like your name never made it past the uniform. That's where I was heading. And I was bringing 2 soldiers with me who had no idea just how invisible we'd become. We made it to the edge of a transport road 2 days after the desert stopped trying to cook us. Brown could barely walk. Henley was barely conscious. Me. I was upright, but my legs were on borrowed time, and the radio, that old beat-up friend of mine, had finally gone quiet. Still, we made it. We reached an outpost checkpoint just past the ridge. Nothing special. 3 trucks, a folding table, a sandbag bunker, and a corporal who looked like he hadn't shaved since the war began. I stepped forward, uniform dirty, lips cracked, hand raised slow like a man with nothing left to lose. Private Merritt, Royal Signals Corps, requesting medical evac for wounded. He blinked like he was staring at a ghost. You're From where? Sector D7? D7 was cleared. Well, guess someone missed a spot. He called in, voice tight. A jeep showed up 15 minutes later with 2 medics. They loaded up Brown and Henley without a word. Not a question, not a thanks. Then came the officer. Captain Renner. Pressed uniform, fresh boots, and a face that looked like it never knew what dust felt like. He didn't shake my hand, didn't ask if I was all right, just looked me over like I'd left footprints where they wanted silence. Your merit. I've been told. You disobeyed direct orders. I saved 2 men. That's not your call. I looked him dead in the eye. It was nobody's call. That's why I made it. He didn't like that. You left your position, abandoned communications, acted outside chain of command. I smiled, just enough to show I had something left in me. If following protocol means letting my men die, then yeah, guilty. Now here's the thing. Men like Renner, they don't shout, they don't threaten, they record. So he did what they always do, filed a report. Cold, clinical, no mention of the rescue. Just unauthorized field action, potential liability. He had me signed for reassignment before I finished the water they gave me. They shipped Brown and Henley off to a recovery tent. Me. They sent me to a refueling depot near Benghazi. No barracks, no briefing. Just handed me a toolkit and told me, "You fix radios now. Stay out of trouble." Trouble? Let me tell you what trouble looks like. It looks like a man doing the right thing and watching the world punish him for it. That depot was a graveyard of broken tech and broken men. Old gear, outdated parts, and soldiers the system didn't want to see anymore. A guy named Miller was there. Gray-haired, missing 2 fingers, brilliant with wiring. Used to be a lead tech before a transfer error sent him to nowhere. They called us scrap handlers. No rank, no respect. Just wires, heat, and silence. First night I asked for access to long-range frequencies. "No authorization," the sergeant said. Second night I rebuilt one of the transmitters. Got it working in half the time the last crew managed. No recognition. Third night, I picked up a signal. Not British, not German, civilian. A nearby village calling for aid. Locals caught in crossfire, kids injured. Food lines blocked. I went to report it. The sergeant, name was Calloway, wide gut, wider attitude, didn't even look up. Not our jurisdiction, but it's our frequency. Not our problem. That's when it hit me. They didn't just want me quiet. They wanted me plugged in and useless, like a lamp in a sealed room. But I wasn't built for that. So I started logging the calls, quietly, night after night. Civilians, scouts, resistance units. People who didn't know I existed but somehow trusted the signal would find someone decent. I became that someone. I built a wall of notes. Locations, dates, voices, please. No one asked, no one wanted it. But when the real war crept closer, and their maps started failing them, guess who had the answers? That's right. The radio man. One evening, a new officer arrived at the depot. Lieutenant Foster, young but not green, walked like he read books and carried weight. He noticed my log within 5 minutes. What's all this? Just things I hear. He read for 5 minutes, didn't speak. Then, "Do you mind if I forward this to command?" I said. "You can try." He did. 2 days later, they moved him. Just like that. Gone. I got the message loud and clear, but then something unexpected happened. Brown sent word. Not a letter, a radio ping, just coordinates and a phrase. Still standing. They can't bury truth forever. I sat with that for hours. Didn't say it out loud, but I knew what it meant. If they weren't going to write our story, we'd write it ourselves, one signal at a time. You ever feel the walls shift around you? Not physically, but like something underneath the paint knows you don't belong, and wants you gone. That was life at the Benghazi Depot, a place built to store fuel, fix junk, and bury people like me in silence. Thing is, I wasn't built for silence, and I sure as day wasn't built to play dead while the war rolled past. After Foster got pulled out, just for noticing my signal logs, it was clear what I had wasn't wanted. Not by the brass, not by the paperwork, but the war. The war wanted it. People were calling for help. Information was slipping between cracks, and if I didn't catch it, it vanished. So I kept logging, even when they locked the equipment cabinets, even when they reassigned me to maintenance detail, which is a fancy way of saying scrub rust off things nobody uses. I kept listening, built a rig from spare parts, hitched a transmitter to a wind-powered crank some genius left behind. Radio Frankenstein, wired with tape and bad intentions, and every night, after the lights dimmed and the voices shut down, I heard them. The forgotten, not enemy chatter, not spy codes, just people, lost scouts, downed pilots, local farmers whose villages had been steamrolled by shifting front lines. Sometimes all they said was, "Is anyone listening?" And I'd answer, "Yeah, I'm here." Simple, but it mattered. Now here's where the real storm started. A week after Foster disappeared, the depot got an inspection team. Not the usual clipboard crowd. This group walked like they had desks with names on them and chairs they never pulled out themselves. Lieutenant Colonel Hambrick led the squad. Tall, polished, eyes like cold metal. Said he was there to review structural and logistical cohesion. Translation: he was here to sniff out anything off script. First day, he ignored me. Second day, he found my bunk. Third day, he found my logbook. I came back from detail and saw it sitting on his desk, pages open, red pen marks on the margins. He didn't look up when I walked in. "Private Merritt," he said, like he'd just remembered the name from a file. "You've been recording unauthorized transmissions." "I've been recording real ones." He tapped the book. "You have coordinates here, unverified, unsanctioned, no chain of confirmation. These aren't actionable." "They're human." He stood. "Do you believe you're operating above protocol?" "No, sir," I said, calm. "I believe I'm operating where protocol refuses to go." He nodded, like that confirmed whatever he needed to know. "Pack your things. You're being transferred." "Where to?" "Doesn't concern you." That night I didn't sleep. Didn't eat either. I sat beside my gear, staring at the logbook, pages full of calls nobody wanted, lives suspended in airwaves. I thought of Brown, Henley, Foster, every one of them sidelined or silenced for trying to listen. I wasn't angry. Not exactly, I was clear. At dawn, a truck rolled up. Standard transport. Dusty canvas, one driver, one passenger, a quiet officer with his hat low. No conversation, just a gesture. "Get in." I rode for hours, no map, no words. And then we stopped. Not a camp, not a base. A small comm station tucked behind a ridge. Remote. Quiet. Too quiet. They walked me in. 2 soldiers stood inside. One monitoring frequencies, the other typing on a slow, clunky Morse rig. Third was an older sergeant. Name tag read Wells. He looked me over like he was seeing through layers. "You Merritt?" "That's what they call me." "They said you're a tech with a problem following silence." I didn't answer. He smiled. One of those half-smiles men give when they've been around long enough to know when the system's full of it. Good, he said. Turns out this place wasn't punishment. It was exile, unofficial, unfunded, off the books. A place where signals got dumped, low priority, intercepted transmissions. The kind command didn't have time for. They called it the dead ear. I called it home. Wells briefed me. We don't fix radios here. We read people. You hear something real, you bring it to me, not them. That's how I started working the board again. Night shifts, long scans, picking up cries for help from units who got lost in the reshuffles. Sometimes it was just static. Sometimes it was poetry in the middle of gunfire. And sometimes it was intel that could save lives. One night, a scout patrol came through on an open band, breathing heavy, signal weak. South Canyon, movement, armor, repeat, armor. I tracked the location, cross-referenced logs, found a blind spot on the latest HQ maps, a gap between two secured sectors. I brought it to Wells. He studied it for 5 seconds. Send it up. But I said send it. I did. 12 hours later, I was called to the station's outer tent. Colonel Hambrick stood there, same man who had me reassigned. You're back, he said flatly. No, sir, I replied. I'm just where I should have been from the start. He didn't flinch. You sent an unauthorized warning. It got through. He nodded once. And for now, that's all that matters. Then he left. Just like that. Didn't promote me, didn't apologize. But that moment, that silence, it meant something. They heard me, maybe not fully, but they heard me. And after months of talking into the void, that was enough. You've seen how far a man can be pushed. But what happens when he starts pushing back? The next chapter isn't quiet, and it sure as hell isn't clean. What happens when a man finally finds the one place he can do real good, only to realize the system might come for that too? There's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing's what officers do when you speak. Listening's what happens when they finally realize you are the only one standing between them and a disaster. Took 'em long enough. By the time my message saved that scout patrol, the tone around me shifted. Slight, but real. No brass bands, no medals. Just fewer sideways looks when I walked into the tent, and a little more space when I sat at the board. And that was enough. The comm station they dumped me in, the dead ear, as they called it, became something else. It was no longer just a holding pen for outdated gear and voices that didn't fit the script. It became a hub. Quiet at first, then steady. Day by day, new frequencies popped in. Some were soldiers lost behind enemy lines. Others were resistance fighters. Some were villagers passing messages they didn't even know the importance of. But they all had one thing in common. They were talking because someone, somewhere, had told them there was a radio man out there who actually listened. And I did. Every damn word. One morning I picked up a pattern, a set of coordinates repeating over different frequencies. Unusual. Each came from a different voice, a different accent, a different kind of urgency. But the coordinates? Same sector, same stretch of rocky dead zone nobody had touched for weeks. I flagged it. Wells, the old sergeant running our little camp, looked at it, ran a hand down his face and muttered, "This isn't coincidence." "No, sir," I said. "It's movement." He passed it up, this time directly to a recon unit he trusted. 2 days later, I got a return message. Simple. Direct. Confirmed. Enemy artillery staging at flagged coordinates. Intervention in progress. Good work. Now here's where the story breaks off the rails, because once a voice becomes useful, The system has to decide what to do with it. And the system, it doesn't like improvised instruments. The next week, Command sent someone. Again. Captain Lorne. Sharp uniform, sharper eyes, but something different in his walk. He moved like a man who knew he was walking through ashes, but didn't want to start another fire. He asked to meet me privately. We sat in the outer tent. Hot air, a buzzing fly, and a stack of my signal logs on the table between us. "I've been reading your notes," he said. "Long read," he smirked. "You've got a habit of stepping outside the lines. Lines got erased when people stopped showing up." He nodded slowly. "You know, Private, they're starting to talk about formalizing this." "Formalizing what?" "This." He gestured around the tent at the boards, the logs, the handwritten maps tacked up with knives. "This kind of operation, field-based intel, human signal reading, real-time data, not reports filtered through 4 desks." I raised an eyebrow. "Is this a pitch or a warning?" He leaned forward. "It's a door." And that's when it got real. They offered me a team. Not a promotion, not a medal, just responsibility. A small group, handpicked, no uniforms required, no command interference. Our job, listen, verify, intercept what others ignored. Not spy work, not sabotage, just ears in the right places. I said yes. But I had conditions. First, no censorship. If I heard it, it got logged. Period. Second, I picked my crew. Lorne agreed. Reluctantly, but he agreed. That night I wrote 2 names on the first page of the new logbook. Brown, Henley. Next day, I sent for them. Brown came first. Limp still bad, but his eyes clear, his voice stronger than I remembered. "Didn't expect to see you in charge," he said. "Didn't expect to be," I replied. Henley came a week later, still young but not green anymore. He'd seen the worst, and somehow didn't flinch. We added one more, a woman named Ingrid. Norwegian by birth, trained as a field operator, exiled from 2 posts for operational disagreements. Her mind worked like a cipher wheel, fast, sharp, unforgiving. The 4 of us set up camp at a forward relay post. Not much. Just 2 tents, a sandbag wall, and a rusted antenna we resurrected from a scrapyard. But we made it sing. Every day, more signals, more lives caught in between orders and silence, and every night, we logged them, routed them, sometimes even acted on them. We weren't following orders anymore, we were writing them. Of course, not everyone liked that. 3 weeks in, we got our first red-flagged transmission. Official notice, cease all unverified communications. Pending review. I looked at Brown. He looked at me. "No," we said. That was the night we sent out a broadcast, first of its kind. Short, simple, unofficial. "This is Relay 9. If you are stranded, if you have no orders, if the map left you behind, send your signal. We are listening." The next morning our board lit up like a Christmas tree. Wells called in, voice quiet, but proud. "They heard you," he said, and for the first time in a long time I felt it. Not rank, not status, but purpose, the kind you don't get handed, the kind you build with your own 2 hands. They gave him nothing. He built something louder than silence. But when truth starts making noise, it doesn't stay quiet for long. You ever feel the weight of something before it happens? Not the moment, the build-up, that slow pressure in your chest, like the air's thicker, like the room's too quiet. That's what the last week at Relay 9 felt like. Not fear, not paranoia, just awareness, like the air knew what was coming before we did. We were getting too good, too efficient, too connected. Our signal was clean, our intel precise, and our board was lighting up like clockwork. Command couldn't ignore us anymore, not because they respected us, but because every time they needed to patch a hole in their line, it turned out we already had a map of the leak. And maps don't lie. But Command hates being made to look late. They called it an audit, sent 3 officers in polished uniforms and stiff collars, the kind who measure their words in teaspoons and never unbutton their top button, no matter how hot it gets. Major Wexler led the group. Long face, thin voice, walked like he'd never tripped in his life. He came in, asking polite questions with dangerous undertones. How are your logs categorized? Who approves outbound transmissions? Do you vet civilian signals before recording? Every answer we gave was followed by a look that said, "You're not following the handbook." But see, we weren't. That was the point. They spent 3 days with us. 3 quiet, tense days. No yelling, no orders. Just slow dismantling. They questioned everyone on the team, one by one, pulled us aside, asked the same things, different ways. Brown said they asked about our personal views on chain of command. Henley said they asked if we ever filtered calls for political bias. Ingrid? She just laughed and said they didn't know how to handle her answers. They kept blinking like I was speaking Latin, she told me. When they finished, they packed up and left. No warning, no closure, just, "Command will be in touch." I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. We sat around the radio table. Nobody said the word shutdown, but it floated in the air like a silent cough. Ingrid finally broke the silence. If they cut us off, what happens to the voices? Henley looked at the board. They'll keep calling. Brown nodded. And nobody will answer. That hit hard. Because we all knew, once you start hearing people in the dark, you don't forget them. You don't forget the medic in Sector M calling in from under rubble, trying to keep 2 wounded alive with only his belt and a piece of wire. You don't forget the transport driver lost in sandstorm radio static for 6 hours, asking for bearings like it was a lifeline. You don't forget the young woman whispering coordinates in code, risking everything because she believed someone was listening. And now they might all go unheard. The next day, we got a sealed crate. No markings, just stamped Relay 9. Inside, a new signal board, state-of-the-art, military issue, direct line to command. A note attached in stiff handwriting. Install immediately. All previous equipment subject to review. Thank you for your service. Translation: We're taking over your board. From now on, you listen on our terms. I stared at that crate for a full 5 minutes. Then I picked it up, walked outside, and set it gently in the sand. Wells called through the comm. You get the box? Yeah. Gonna install it? No. Silence, then. Thought so. The team gathered around me. Brown crossed his arms. Ingrid smirked. Henley looked nervous but didn't flinch. I looked at them. You want out, I said. No shame in it. You gave everything. You earned that right. Nobody moved, so I walked back inside. We stripped the board. Not replaced. Rewired. Rewritten. We kept the shell but rewired the guts. Rerouted the feeds, pulled out their pre-authorized filters, and built our own encryption. It took all night. And by sunrise, we were back on air, on our terms. But we knew that wouldn't go unnoticed. So we did something else. We broadcasted, not just to units, to everyone. Short message. Clean, no politics, no names. If you've ever sent a signal and got silence, this is for you. We heard you. You mattered. And no matter what comes next, remember, someone listened. And then we signed off. That message spread. How far, we'll never know. But the next morning, something strange happened. Calls started multiplying. Not just soldiers, civilians, medics, pilots, other relay operators, not all official, not all clean but real. People weren't just calling in. They were calling back, one frequency after another, short pings, acknowledgments, and then something I'll never forget. To the man at Relay 9, you saved my brother's unit. I never got to say thank you. No name, no return code, just that. It was enough. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were voices. They tried to make him disappear. He became the frequency everyone tuned to. This isn't a story about war. It's a story about being heard and making it count.